Hi everyone, my name is Natalie DC. Welcome back to my channel. I am a reader, writer, and artist here to talk about books with you, and art, and maybe a little bit of writing. In today's video, I will be doing the 2023 mid-year freakout tag. This is my second year here on BookTube. Time flies. I wanted to check in with you guys. It's the middle of the year. I'm a little late, but that's okay. And yeah, I wanted to do the mid-year freakout tag. I know there are a bunch of questions for this tag, so I might have slightly different questions than other booktubers who have done this tag this year, but I'm just going based off of the questions that I did last year. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. The first question in the mid-year freakout tag is the best book that you read in 2023. Now, this was a very difficult question for me to answer this year because I read so many good books. So I decided to pick 3 books, one from each genre of book that I've read this year. I guess technically nonfiction is another category I could have done, but I just chose to go with 3. So poetry, graphic novel, and prose fiction. So yeah, the first best book that I read for graphic novels is actually one that I haven't talked about on my channel yet. It is It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth by Zoe Thorogood. I actually got this book as an ARC, so thank you to NetCali for that. And I actually did not expect to love this graphic novel as much as I did. Essentially, it is sort of a graphic novel memoir, so there's your nonfiction spin a little bit. It's talking about a 6-month period in the author's life in which she is battling anxiety and depression, and it's basically the author trying to put her life back together again. And the reason why I love this graphic novel so much and why I'd say it's the best graphic novel I've read this year is purely based off of the art. There are so many different art styles that are used in this book. Any of you have watched the cartoon The Amazing World of Gumball? It is very much a kaleidoscopic amalgamation of different art styles, including even photography and sort of sketchy style, more cartoony style, more realistic style. Like, it is so beautiful, and the way the author uses these different art styles to represent different parts of herself and kind of show those art styles coming together into this full person that she is. I love that, and you'll see what I mean if you read the graphic novel. From the first page you will see that different uses of art styles, and I just thought it was so creative, so innovative, so unique. So I had a blast reading this, even despite the very heavy subject matter, and I would highly recommend it. That is the best graphic novel that I read. The best poetry book that I read is actually a poetry book that I read at the very beginning of the year. It is On Sun Swallowing by Dakota Warren. This is essentially a debut collection of poetry by Dakota Warren, who is actually a booktuber. It was really cool to read her collection at the beginning of the year, and I believe I did discuss this in my January wrap-up, so if you want to hear my thoughts there, you can. But essentially, this is an exploration of girlhood, godhood, and growing up in the Australian bush from the perspective of the author, and it just has such a beautiful, gorgeous aesthetic going for it, as well as the beautiful cover and the actual structure of the poetry collection itself is so unique, with little illustrations and doodles throughout. I had a blast reading this, and just being a fan of the author herself on her BookTube channel just really cemented this as probably my favorite poetry collection that I've read this year. Granted, I've read a lot of poetry collections this year, probably the most I've ever had in one year, so this was a tough decision, but I ultimately decided to choose this one just based on how inspired it made me feel. So yeah, I would highly recommend you check it out. And finally, the last best book that I read this year is a work of fiction, and it is Sleepwalking by Meg Wolitzer. I read this in February, so I did discuss this on my channel. Sleepwalking is, I believe, Meg Wolitzer's debut work. It was published when she was just 23, and it was the first book of Meg Wolitzer's that I read, and it essentially follows 3 deaf girls, so 3 girls at Swarthmore campus, so a university, and they are obsessed with dead female poets. The main character, Claire Danziger, she is obsessed with this poet, Lucy Asher, and her obsession combined with her affair with this guy who's at her college leads her to go on this journey of self-discovery and I won't spoil like what happens, but it's a very unique premise that still explores female mental health, and I just adored the relatable characters, the gloomy atmosphere, and the stream of consciousness writing style. And honestly, it's very reminiscent of Sylvia Plath's The Bell Jar, but I would say I actually enjoyed this more than that classic, so that just says something. I definitely consider it a modern day classic. Again, I've read a lot of fiction works this year, but I decided to include this one because, I don't know, it just stood out to me as a book that I will definitely remember, and one that will definitely have me coming back to Meg Wolitzer's writing. So that was the first question of the book tag. A couple questions on here I will have multiple books for because I just cannot decide. But not this question, because the second question in the mid-year freakout tag is the best sequel that you've read this year. And I believe I've only read one sequel this year, and that is the Tea Dragon Festival, aka the second book in the Tea Dragon Society graphic novel series by Kay O'Neill. This is a really cute and really adorable series if you're not familiar with it. I don't believe I've spoken about this series in particular on my channel, but I have spoken about Kay O'Neill's works in past videos. This is a prequel, even though it is considered a sequel to the Tea Dragon Society, it is, canonically speaking, a prequel to the first book of the series. It follows Rin and Aiden. Rin is a young boy who lives amongst tea dragons, which are these little creatures that procure tea from their little leaves, and it's really adorable, really cute. And Aiden, he is a young dragon who is awoken by Rin, and eventually they start to figure out how are dragons going to be incorporated into this society where only tea dragons exist, because they are actually different species. Yeah, it's just about Rin and Aiden trying to figure out how Aiden is going to kind of come back into society after being asleep for so many years, and eventually they fall in love. And it's a really cute love story that I thought acted as a really amazing prequel. Actually, one of probably my favorite of the series, because I just enjoyed these characters in particular so much. So yeah, I would definitely consider this the best sequel that I've read this year, albeit the only sequel I've read this year, but I digress. The next question is a new release that you have yet to read but really want to read. So once again, I have a couple books for this question. The first book I have as an answer is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This was released in April, and it is another romance by Emily Henry. It follows two characters named Harriet and Wynne, and I don't know much about the book, but it's by Emily Henry, so of course I'm gonna read it in September for my all the pink books that I read in the month of September video. So yeah, I will definitely be reading this in September. I really want to read it, and yeah, I'm not going to go too much into the synopsis because I haven't read it yet. The next book that has already been released that I really want to read is Chain of Thorns, the third installment of the Last Hour series by Cassandra Clare. Now, I don't think I've spoken about this on my channel yet, but I am a huge Shadowhunters fan. I know some of you are going to be like, ew, that's kind of cringy. And I agree with you, but I'm way too in deep. Do you know how many thousands of pages I've read of these characters? I'm too in deep to just stop reading these books. They are massive, they are filled to the brim with fan service, but I don't care. I love them. They are my guilty pleasure. Let me live. But I digress. This is the third installment of the Last Hour series. It came out in January, but I have yet to read it. Really want to read it by the end of the year. This series takes place in the early 1900s, I believe 1903, London, and it follows Cordelia Carstairs and James Herondale, characters that are ancestors to the characters in the Mortal Instruments series, which is the most popular series of the Shadowhunters mega realm. It's made up of 5 series. It's very complicated. I don't want to explain it, but just know this is a third book in a series. I really plan on reading it. It is massive. I think it's like 800 pages, but I don't care. It came out. I need to read it by Miss Cassandra Clare. So that is my other answer to this question. And my last answer to this question is another installment to a series I really love, which is The Sun and the Star, a Nico D'Angelo adventure by Rick Riordan. This is a book by Rick Riordan, co-written with Mark Oshiro, and it follows characters Nico D'Angelo and Will Solis, who are from the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and this follows them. They are going into Tartarus to rescue a reformed titan named Bob. And yeah, I'm just super excited for this book. It's gonna have a lot of fan service, I think. And yeah, I'm just really excited to delve back into these characters again because I haven't read a Percy Jackson series in 3 years at least. So yeah, I've been missing these characters a lot, and I'm really excited to delve back into their story through this book, which came out in May of this year. Plan on reading it at the end of the year, so yeah, got a ways to go, but I'm really excited. Speaking of Rick Riordan, the next question in the mid-year freakout tag is a book that is going to be released in the second half of the year that you're excited to read. So, The Chalice of the Gods is the 6th book in the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series by Rick Riordan. It follows Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. Percy is in his senior year of high school, and he just wants to have a normal year of high school after dealing with all of the gods shit, but they won't leave him alone, and he needs to do 3 quests in order to get 3 letters of recommendation so he can go into college. And yeah, it's a silly premise, but once again, same as the last book, I'm really looking forward to delving back into these characters that I haven't read about in ages. So yeah, this book comes out in September, and yeah, I'm really excited to read it. Moving on from anticipated releases, the 5th question of the mid-year freakout tag is biggest disappointment that you've read this year. So this is without a doubt I Miss You, I Hate This by Sarah Sadie. I did a whole sort of rant review in my previous video reading only purple books in the month of June, and yeah, my talking about that book took up most of the video, as you guys probably noticed if you watched that video. So I'm not going to talk about it much here, but essentially it follows 2 best friends, Parisa and Gabriella, and they have to survive a pandemic isolated apart from one another, and through their individual struggles, including anxiety on Parisa's part and poverty on Gabriella's part, we see if their friendship survives under these very, very stressful circumstances. The premise was very intriguing to me, the high ratings was very intriguing to me, as well as the beautiful cover. So I was expecting really to love this and to consider it a really good YA, but unfortunately there were many parts of this book, including dumb, cringy lines of narration and dumb, pointless, unrealistic plots in this book that just really irked me and essentially made me give this book a 3-star rating. So yeah, definitely a very big disappointment. And once again, I won't go too much into details because I already talked at length about it in my previous video. So that is my biggest disappointment. The 6th question in the mid-year freakout tag is biggest surprise. So this was actually sort of a hard one for me because there weren't a lot of books this year that I wasn't expecting to like that I did like. I decided to go with The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen. I discussed this book in my April wrap-up video, and essentially it follows Tien. He is a young boy and he's trying to come out to his parents in a way they'll understand. His parents are Vietnamese immigrants, so he needs to figure out a way to come out to his parents in language that they'll understand. I really loved this book. Initially when I picked it up, I thought it was just going to be a, you know, solid graphic novel, nothing special, but I actually ended up really enjoying this and almost giving it 5 stars based on the gorgeous art style, the use of colors to differentiate between the stories that the main character Tien was reading to his mother versus flashbacks versus the present day. Like, I just really loved how the art style was used to tell this really intriguing story, and yeah, it just really warmed my heart. I did talk about this book quite a bit in the April wrap-up video, so I won't go too much into detail once again, but I really enjoyed it. Didn't expect to love it as much as I did, so I decided to give that as my answer to this question. The 7th question in the mid-year freakout tag is fave author. So I just picked the author that I read the most of. I did read a lot of repeat authors this year, such as Emily Henry and Alice Oseman, but the author that I read the most this year was actually Kay O'Neill, which we've already talked about a bit. They are a graphic novelist. They wrote the acclaimed Tea Dragon Society, as well as Dewdrop, which is a middle grade graphic novel that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I really love their art style. I think it's so cutesy, plus all of the gorgeous colors that they use. Yeah, I'm just really in love with their art in general. Their stories as well are super unique and discuss sort of environmental themes, which I'm always a fan of. And yeah, I just really love their work, and I'm looking forward to checking out more of their work. I believe there are a couple other books of theirs that I haven't checked out yet, so yeah, I would definitely consider them a favorite author of this year. The 8th question in the mid-year freakout tag is fictional crush, which like last year I'm going to politely skip because I don't get fictional crushes on, at least on book characters, so yeah, I'm going to skip. I will defer to the 9th question in the mid-year freakout tag, which is favorite character, just in general, that you've read this year. So this one was pretty easy for me because, well, I've read a lot of really great books this year and none of the characters have really stood out to me as much as the main character in the Side Effects graphic novel by Ted Anderson. I also discussed this book in my previous video, my June wrap-up video. I loved this graphic novel so much. It was almost my favorite graphic novel of the year. It follows the main character Hannah, and she is in her first year of college, so it's her first year away from home, and she's struggling with anxiety and depression. So she gets prescribed some medication, and each new medication that she tries gives her superpowers. And I just think this is a really unique and really fun way to explore mental health and in a young adult graphic novel. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book, and Hannah is just such a relatable character to me. Her inner dialogue while all of these things are happening are like, I mean, this might as well happen. And I just really love that attitude. It's like something that would definitely happen to me. Like if my meds gave me superpowers, I'd be like, yeah, it sounds about right. And yeah, I just think that's so relatable. Instead of being like freaked out, being like, oh, I'm just crazy. Like, no, she's like, yeah, this makes sense. Like, my life is already a mess, so why not add superpowers to the mix? And I just think that's super relatable to me. So yeah, she is definitely my favorite character of all the books that I've read this year. The 10th question in the mid-year freakout tag is a book that made you cry. Now, I don't really cry with books. I'm going to defer to a book that only slightly made me tear up, but that is just because I've read it before and the book means a lot to me. It is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I had to read this book for a project for school, and I had already read it. It's one of my favorite books of all time. If you don't know this book or the movie, what are you doing with your life? But no, I'll explain it. It follows a character named Charlie. He is in his first year of high school, and he's writing these letters that document his time in high school and his time meeting friends, and it is a story of belonging, mental health, and yeah, it is just super heartbreaking but also like super lovely as well. I really adored this book when I first read it when I was like 16, and I still adore it to this day. So yeah, it's one of my favorite books of all time, and if you haven't read it or watched the movie, highly recommend the movie. It's my favorite movie of all time. But if you'd like to read the book is also really great. So yeah, I did not cry reading this book, like rereading this book, but I did tear up, and I'm gonna have that count for this question. 11th question, a book that made you happy. For this question, I went into my feel good tag on Goodreads and looked at the books that I marked as feel good, and one of the books that stood out that I read this year is Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. This is a heartstopper novella that Alice Oseman wrote, and I decided to read some of her novellas this year because I hadn't before. And yeah, it basically in prose explores Nick and Charlie's relationship. There's some cute flirting, some little bit cringy misunderstandings, but overall it's a really cute novella that made me happy seeing these characters thrive. And yeah, it's just one of those things where like I know the characters already, so obviously the book talking about their relationship is gonna make me happy. So yeah, Nick and Charlie for this question of like a book that made me happy. Second to last question, the most beautiful book that you bought or were gifted. So I decided to include 2 books for this question because there's a book that is beautiful that I bought that comes to mind, and a book that is beautiful that I was gifted that comes to mind. So a book that I bought that I really love the cover of is Preparatory School for the End of the World by Not Ram. I discussed this book in my May wrap-up video. It is a gorgeous collection of poetry. I actually have it right here, and as you can see, the cover is super beautiful with this smooth, soft cover. Even the back is really beautiful with the little doodles. So yeah, this is definitely a book that comes to mind that I bought. It's super beautiful. As I said, it is essentially a poetry collection that explores a childhood plagued by religious and sexual trauma. So definitely some dark themes going on. So definitely content warning for those if you're not comfortable reading about that kind of stuff. But I really enjoyed this collection, and as far as covers go, this cover is beautiful. And the book that I was gifted that is the most beautiful is Said the Worms by Jordan Ranft. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. I actually virtually met the author during a release launch party that the publisher Wrong Publishing put on, and it was really lovely. I got to read some of my own poetry as well, and it was a really great time. I really enjoyed this poetry collection. I actually have it right here with me, and I just love the cover so much. The author actually mentioned that when he was describing it to the cover artist, he was trying to explain that he wanted the monkey see, monkey do like images, but with like worms coming out of their head. And I think the cover artist, who is Mashal Sajid, I think they did an amazing work with that concept. This is probably my favorite cover that I've been gifted this year. The last question in the mid-year freakout tag is books that you have to read by the end of the year, and these are all books I've mentioned before. Happy Place by Emily Henry, planning on reading that in September. Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare, planning on reading that in December. The Sun and the Star, a Nico adventure, planning also on reading that in December. And finally, Chalice of the Gods. I'm not planning on reading that at any particular month, but I definitely want to read it by the end of the year. It does come out in September, as I said, so gotta figure out how to work that into my sort of reading schedule. Those are all the books that I'd like to get to by the end of the year, and that is my mid-year freakout tag video. I really hope you guys enjoyed this, hopefully a little bit shorter video. As I said, I won't be doing any wrap-ups until the end of September, but I still have a couple videos planned before then, so stay tuned for those. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below your favorite book that you've read this year so far. Before you head out, I just wanted to let you know my Name Your Poetry chapbook, Blue Pearl, is available for purchase from Bottle Cap Press. You can purchase it through the link in my description. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, week, month, whatever you're feeling. And yeah, guys, I will see you in the next one. Bye!